Welcome, everybody, to the Competition Archery Media Podcast, where we explore all things pertaining to competition archery. I'm your host, PJ Riley. Our CAM podcast is brought to you by our fine platinum sponsors, True Ball Excel, Matthews, PSE, Black Eagle, Elite, B3 Archery, and Victory Archery. Today, we have, as we're talking about sponsors, a great guest with us today. We have a brand new sponsor in Stanislawski Archery Products, and we have the new president, Pete Crawford. Pete, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, PJ. This is really, really exciting for me to be able to get back into the archery. The thing I love the most in my life is probably archery. You know, I like my kids too, but I really love archery.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you got to have love for your kids as well. So, Pete, for those who may not know you, just give us a quick rundown of your background and how you came to be president of Stan.
Well, you want from birth or?
Maybe like a couple days after.
Okay. Well, I started bow hunting when I was 16 years old and had a real passion for it, which led me to the archery industry. I've worked for some iconic brands like Golden Eagle in the mid 90s. I was part of their incredible growth then. And then I went and worked for a rep group right around 2000. Went to work for G5 Outdoors, great company. And then during that time, I was the Archery Trade Association chairman, you know, working alongside some really, really great companies there and with Greg Easton and some of the other folks that were on the board at that time. And then I had an opportunity to buy Elite Archery, which was a really small company out of Washington. We got that negotiated, grew that company, you know, pretty rapidly. I think people remember the outdoor group. It still exists. In 2016, I moved on to some other opportunities. The company was doing really well and moved on to do some other things, consulting. And actually, I had a gentleman, Kenny Green, who worked for QAD, was a friend of mine. He had an invention he wanted me to help him sell. Worked on that for a few years. But then the opportunity came up. This is in Western New York where I grew up, and I've known Eric and Doug Springer for a very, very long time. And, you know, I was kind of like, I want to do some more consulting in archery. Called up Eric and said, hey, I think I can help. And he goes, my brother wants to pursue some other exciting opportunities and would like to have the opportunity to be bought out. And I was like, wow, that sounds perfect, because I've always loved this release line, even though I was part of another release line in the past. This was kind of always the gold standard, even to us. Yes. That, the Stanislawski brand, the history of Mel Stanislawski and the early pioneers of archery really mattered to me. So this opportunity came up. So I took that chance and opportunity to buy out Doug. And Doug has been able to go and do some of the things that he really likes to do and wants to do to grow a business. And as many of the people who are listening know, Eric is a great designer. He can see how the parts of the release work on the inside, just in his head. He can program machines. It's a perfect partnership of things that he loves to do and I don't.
That's always good. It's worse when both of you like to do the same thing and nobody likes to do this one over here.
Correct.
But yeah, so the Stan releases, I mean, as you mentioned, that's kind of the gold standard. And it's interesting because if you shoot archery, especially if you shoot competition archery, Stan releases. You've probably played with them. You've probably owned one or more in your time there. But they were kind of always quiet behind the scenes. You don't hear a lot on the marketing side from Stan. And I know you have a background in that. What's your goals for Stan? What do you want to do?
Well, we feel like here, and one of our mantras is going to be that this is the last connection to the shot of a lifetime. We're making the best releases we possibly can. And generally, like I was able to get out and go to the shoot in Foley, Alabama. People who don't even shoot Stan, right now often say this is the best release, or I shot one 10 years ago. So there's a lot of history of doing this building the best release, building the Rolex, of the release industry. But basically what we're trying to do is get a cohesive message out there. It's part of the reason, we want to work with Cam and work with Lancaster, who I've had a incredible, probably 15-year at least relationship with, is to grow that brand and make it people more aware of what a quality release does. And, I'm never going to bash anybody else's product ever. But there's some opportunity for people who are buying, very expensive bow setups and all to experience a stand and see if it works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those triggers, especially Doug and Eric work on those things. Man, they're just the crispest that you'll find around. It's amazing the precision they have in there. But first, let's start off, Pete. What is it that you like about archery? You mentioned that you started out bow hunting, but what is it that you like about the game?
I when I was growing up, my father died when I was 8 years old, and my mom took me fishing, and I fished every day because I love the outdoors. And then right around 15 or 16 years old, I got introduced to the bow, and I grew up on a farm, so we were always shooting woodchucks and, hunting and doing so forth, those things. My family wasn't particularly great at it, but, I was exposed to guns and so forth. But when I found a bow, what happened was a friend became a friend, moved from Oregon when Golden Eagle moved from Oregon to Farmington, New York. And I got a bow from her, and I was shooting fingers. And from the moment I, released an arrow and it went where I was looking, I was hooked.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hunt myself into basically pneumonia every year. I was, I worked at it so hard. And then it ultimately became a position with Golden Eagle, working with some really great people that, some of them have passed away, like Craig Doherty, who took me under his wing and gave me an opportunity to not only, work for Golden Eagle in operations, but also get out and meet some of the great people, like at some of the big retailers and the dealers, and, kind of develop that relationship where, I got to love not only archery, but the business of archery. So I would say, I've had a pretty good career of archery and business. But really what it comes down to, PJ, is I love archery, and I would I won't do anything to hurt it. I think Rob Crawford has set a very good example for people in making a business that cares about archery, and then archery takes care of his business. And that's kind of exactly how I feel. It's like, I love bow hunting. Some of the people who do know me, I've been fortunate to be able to hunt in a lot of really cool places. I wouldn't consider myself a trophy hunter, but I'm also someone who is very passionate about being an ethical and prepared bow hunter. And then I really enjoy going out and shooting some of these tournaments, trying to not to come in last place and try to represent myself reasonably well. And then, maybe having a beer with the rest of the archery community, which is an awesome family.
Yeah. 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 You mentioned Rob Crawford, and of course, hey, I've been around many of his business decisions, and he always says that what's right for his business is what's right for archery. He's like, if I make a good decision that helps archery, we'll naturally do well. But that's what he always puts first. And then all boats float to the top.
Yeah, which is why, we've become friends over the years and had some really great talks about things that will help archery overall.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue that now. I'm excited to be back helping with that as well.
So interestingly, okay, so you're back here with Stan now. You've been in the industry for a while. What are the biggest differences you see now compared to when you started with Golden Eagle back in the 90s?
I think that's pretty easy to define. I guess, you could consider archery kind of a cottage industry full of enthusiasts, and the people that were, like Rex Darlington and all these older, like Pete Shepley, and they got in it because they love it. And they treated dealers appropriately, right? Because they loved it. And I'm that way. One of the things that has happened to archery is because it's virus proof, people, in fact, it thrives in a virus. is that investors really like to invest in archery outdoor space. It could be kayak fishing, it could be anything, but they really like it, you know? And what I've seen is that accountants are now running a lot of these companies, and it becomes more about the bottom line than what's best for archery.
Right.
And my passion for archery and what it's done for my life and my family and my friends and the endless amount of friends that I hunt with every year. I mean, archery's given so much to me. And there's a lot of people out there that are simply making decisions on an Excel spreadsheet. And it's not always the best thing for archery. And certainly, an understanding of the dealers and their challenges and what they need to be successful, understanding that they're up at midnight, writing checks and checking inventory. And then they're spending 12 hours a day talking to customers who really need them to be successful. It's a labor of love, and appreciating that. I think that's something we can do here at Stan, and the people that, are coming to work for us. And as we grow, if they have that understanding, we'll be fine.
Gotcha. How about from your time as the ATA president? Because then there you were in the inner workings of the industry, surrounded by all these, people you mentioned, like Greg Easton and all the companies like that. Do you see a difference now between then? That was like early 2000s, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, around 2007, 2008.
Okay.
That area. Yeah, 2006. Yeah, I think there's, the ATA has done a really good job over the years trying to support archery. Part of the reason I was elected chairman is I was looking at it a little bit differently than, maybe some of the other folks that were there that were really, passionate about it, really cared about archery. But I truly am a believer in, it's a trade association, so it should take care of the actual membership, and that includes the dealers, and,
all right.
And I have some different views on how to grow archery, and I think that they have embraced some of those. One of the things that we came up with when I was there was the Bucks program, where people get discounts, the dealers get discounts at the show. That was one of the things, the initiatives we worked on there, because I really do believe, and going back to the same thing, if you water the plant that is archery, everybody benefits from it. Right. So yes, they're doing quite a bit more. I know there's a lot of pressure right now with what COVID has done to shows. But I'm excited for this upcoming ATA show, not just for Stan and a kind of reintroduction of Stan and myself to the industry, but just getting together with our archery friends.
What do you see? Like, if you were to take the pulse of archery now, based on your years of experience in the industry, what do you see? How would you rate the health of the archery industry right now?
Well, probably it's the best it's ever been. With what, COVID if it has a silver lining, it's actually gotten people up kind of off their butts and got them outside. And, the group of guys that, may have stopped shooting their bow to, raise children and, spent the last 10 years doing that, realize that they miss turkey hunting, or they miss deer hunting, or they miss shooting their bow. And it's pretty evident in not just this industry, because I get to see some other ones, but, fishing's booming. Absolutely. Golf is booming, anything to do with being outside. And I'm really, really hopeful, PJ, that people keep this passion for being outside. I hope my kids realize that the outside's the better place to be. It's right. So I would say the archery industry is in a great place. I think we need to be prepared for, a parachute coming out a little bit here on the growth, but the new licenses that have been sold, the old participants that are back, if we treat them right, they'll stay.
That, you mentioned licenses, and here in Pennsylvania, that's where we are. I know we had been in a fairly steady decline in hunting license sales. It wasn't steep, but if you compare it to like the late 80s, it's pretty precipitous. But this past year, we picked up 25,000 new hunters in Pennsylvania, which we haven't seen anything like that in years. So yeah, people are definitely getting back into it. There was a big spike in bow hunting licenses. So yeah, people definitely are getting outside.
Yeah, and we've seen it, your competition archery media. So, you see the participation. Even at Foley, you could tell people were excited to get outside, be in the sunshine and shoot their bows and just hang out. They almost didn't even care what scores they shot. It was just getting a chance to get out there and be with the people. And it would have been interesting to see how Vegas went, if it could have been a full event. There might've been 4,000 plus people there shooting. And I remember when we were excited when it was 1,500, so and that's, obviously target archery is a really big thing for Stan, getting into and pushing target quality in our hunting release line, which is small at this point, is going to be really, really important. So, people participating in archery, participating in hunting and the outdoors, again, it's a win for every archery company.
For a company like Stan that deals with both bow hunters and target archers, how do you view them as separate in what you're doing, or are you just out to make the best releases for whoever? Well, how does it work with having bow hunters and having target archers?
Well, I think you kind of made it a simple point there. We want to make the very best top of class product for everyone we make stuff for. But, if you're target inspired, your hunting releases are going to be spectacular. The other thing is that, I don't know what the percentage is, but when the target archers, probably 80 to 90% of them hunt as well.
Right.
I'm also a big believer, PJ, in if we build things that the Western archer will use and trust, on a 10-day backpack hunt, the Eastern guys are totally going to be taken care of. They're going to have the best products for whitetails and Eastern hunting they could ever find. So, my approach is, I would never want to sell anything I wouldn't personally use. I'm actually getting better and better with shooting a thumb button and some back tension. I still have all my teeth, which is good. But just the teaching part of it and the quality, I want people like, hey, PJ, try my Stan release. And then you go and you buy one and it feels exactly the same. Like you're not disappointed. You paid a fair dollar, a good dollar for our product, but you're never disappointed and it'll last you forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Stan, I know in particular, when we're working with different archers, especially archers that talk about target panic, boy, the Stan tension activated releases. I mean, that's definitely one of the things that the company is known for, that just super innovative. I didn't know about that until I was dealing with target panic. Somebody's like, hey, try this Stan element. And now I practice with that thing all the time, just when I start feeling anticipation. So,
I had a great conversation with one of my really good hunting friends, and he's a great bow shot, but he's an animal killer, and he basically said that everybody has some sort of target panic, even it's a little bit and it's manageable.
Yeah.
They have some version of it. And I think you brought up a great point. We do make a release called the Element. And that release has gotten me where I can shoot back tension.
Yeah.
But what it also does is gets me holding the pin right in the center for when I go back to my index finger. So I think there's a real wisdom and benefit. And we hope with your help, with Cam and some of our relationships with Lancaster and future podcasts that'll be coming from Stan, that we can teach people that. Because I literally can shoot, an Element or our Perfects 5 times and I'm back in the center. So it's really, really helpful. And obviously if you're in a full blown target panic, which I've seen other people have, you have to put your time behind a back tension to stop it. And some people can never go back.
Right.
You can never go back to an index finger. But our index finger releases, I have one right here. This is our Extinction.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The internals of this particular release, mimic the quality and the sear action that are in our target releases.
Yes.
So if you put your finger over and just pull your hand back, it'll fire like a back tension. It'll fire the same way every time. I think that a lot of creep, sometimes roller sears, cause people to develop target panic, to be quite honest. So our sear type releases, you'll never see a roller sear release from us. We'll never do it.
Right.
Because I feel that strongly about it. I think you need to be able to feel the trigger a little bit.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that's kind of our approach, is that everything we make is going to have 100% lifetime guarantee on it. We expect people to be very successful with it and sending us pictures 15 years later of how they're successful with our product.
So let's talk about now Stan coming on as a sponsor of CAM, Competition Archery Media. We're thankful and very excited to have that because, you know, obviously we're out there with all these tournament archers and seeing everybody shooting Stans, and we're like, hey, these guys got to be in the game with us. What is it that you hope to derive from that partnership?
Well, first of all, Rob Crawford, Steve and Eric Yoder, Jason Holman, the friends that I've had there for years, we work together great. And it makes sense for us to work together on this project as well. I think for me, people know me as a bow hunter, and I do go out and shoot. I've shot Vegas, I've shot, ASA events. I think what I want to do is, and one of the reasons, I mentioned I love archery, which I think has helped us be a little successful. The other thing too is listening to what customers want. And through this relationship and going out and shooting and listening to what the actual archers are looking for and making sure we deliver it, whether it's, in adjustability or feel or handle size, whatever it is, we want to be able to take all that information that we receive, from you guys and from the actual users at the very end, and be able to distill that into exactly what the customer wants and exactly what will help the customer be even more successful in archery. Because they oftentimes don't know exactly why a product's making them better, but we want to make sure that we make products that make people better.
Yeah. So was it your plan to come in and, okay, you come in to Stan and then just have Sharon Wallace win her first ever NFA Indoor Nationals right out of the gate? That, I guess, I'm sure that was part of your strategy plan.
Well, naturally she'll tell you that she won because I coached her through it. And no, that was an awesome thing to have happen. It's kind of cool because you really need your equipment to perform under pressure. That's probably the most pressure you can be under, is being the last two people shooting for a national championship. No, that's worked out really great. We have Stefan Hansen too.
Right.
And, it's kind of good for me to get out there because, like I said, I'm a little bit more of a bow hunter. We joke a little bit about, me going to Vegas and shooting some of these things. I shoot okay, but these guys are obviously world-class. And, but getting that feedback, we've had some really awesome interaction, Stefan and I, already on, what 2022 products are going to look like with his input and Sharon's input, and, just a lot of the guys and people that are already shooting Stan and they don't even get paid for it.
Right.
No, that was really cool. And she actually finished second in Foley too. So
yeah, right.
She's our rock star right
now. Okay. So you said you went out and you shot some ASAs and shot Vegas, mainly a bow hunter. Which is more nerve-wracking? You're up there, drawing down on a world-class deer, or I think you've gone goat hunting.
Oh yeah. We can go on for a long time about that.
Which is more nerve-wracking, or standing down there in the field at Vegas?
I think they're good training for both, to be honest, but I would say just shooting on a line in front of other people is harder than, for me, shooting an animal with a bow and arrow has become pretty instinctive. Gotcha. I think honestly, one of the things I've even talked to Steve Yoder about is there's a total difference in discipline on shooting at an animal and shooting at a target. And a target has a spot on it, right? So it's a little bit difficult, and I think some people will be able to relate to this, to be able to put the pin on a spot and cover it up and shoot. I know some of the shooters, and even myself, I have to set my bow up because I want to see what I'm shooting at.
Me too.
I have to set it up a little low, actually, to hit high, where I can see what I'm shooting at. Exactly. Whereas an animal is kind of a blank 3-dimensional thing, and it's more of a plan shot, and I don't have any issue holding the pin exactly where I want to on an animal. So it's really two different disciplines. Obviously, there's other things that can happen in bow hunting with animals moving and a lot of outside other influences.
Yeah.
But it's a different discipline. But I would say, my experiences in shooting Vegas, people were talking to me the whole time while I was shooting, which was totally fine. But it's definitely different to get up there and realize that every single arrow has a score to it. Like, you can sit there and practice and pound the center out of a target, and then when you have to like actually do it, it's another place that target panic can develop, I guess.
I want to know when you can get that. Like, the periods of my life where I was bow hunting a lot, it was like you said, something just happens, you go into autopilot, bam, and things just work out. I want to know how to get that into the target world to where that happens, and I don't just completely crumble shooting around other people. I
think one of the things, PJ, that helps me a little bit, I like to golf too. It's another thing I like to do. And I have like zero swing thoughts. I just hit the back of the ball. And I think that when in archery, if you start having too many swing thoughts, that's when you start to run into problems. If you just can be natural and like, there's the center of the target, it's only 20 yards away, and just make a good release. And for me, I have ADD so bad that like shooting 30 arrows in 2 hours drives me insane. I want to, if I could shoot 30 arrows in 4 minutes and be done with it, I'd shoot a higher score. I really would. So that's the part. It just starts to pile up, just like anything. It's like, hey, I shot 28 good arrows. Now I only have 2 more. That pressure is way harder to me than, killing a screaming bull elk.
Well, it was funny. I did a podcast last week with Casey Crawford, Olympic recurve archer, and she said she shot her first 300 the other night for score, and she had said it got down to the end, and she'd been shooting all tens, and she knew she was shooting good, but I guess didn't know where she was in the score. And then she said she got to the last end and was just all of a sudden, like you said, that pressure just built up. And what I appreciated was she said she had the thoughts, what if I shoot a 9? But then she turned it around to, well, it would also be great if I just shot a 10. So why don't I just do that? Mm-hmm. I don't have that.
99% of it, whether it's animals or paper, is between your ears for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm super happy to be back in archery. Like, I love this. It's like breathing to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody out there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if that's what you like to do, archery is your thing. Mm-hmm. I would think, you didn't really get away from it, but you had other business interests. Now to be back in it, I mean, that's just got to be exhilarating for you. Yeah,
to be hugging people out there again, the friends that we built some really great brands with. And honestly, I don't care who other people shoot for or whatever. They're still great human beings.
Yeah.
And no, I'm tickled to be back in doing this, and and I get an opportunity to take customers hunting again, so I get to hunt a little bit more than I usually do, which is still a lot. So I'm really looking forward to it.
So one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about was here at Competition Archery Media, obviously one of our goals is to try and take archery and bring it to the mainstream. You can turn on TV and see cornhole, bowling, lots of things, frisbee golf, lots of cool stuff. And obviously people like us, well, we love archery and think it's cool, and we'd like to get other people. How do you think we do that to move that forward, to get people to watch it, which then in turn gets them interested in it, to participate in it? How do we do that? What's your advice for us?
I think it really comes down to how it's presented, right? Like, actually watching cornhole is not that interesting, but the way they edit it together, it goes better.
Right.
Like watching people fish, they don't show us fishing, right? For 3 hours before we caught a fish. They show you catching a fish. Yeah. So I think the shoot down format in ASA, nothing against IBO, but that shoot down format is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I think putting a little bit more risk reward, I actually think there's a kind of a cool risk reward thing that could happen at, the Lancaster tournament every year. I have an idea for that. I want to talk to you about at some point. Cool. But like, if you create a cliffhanger of some sort, right? Like watching the guys shoot down, and they got to shoot a 14 at 48 yards. And I mean, everybody knows how nerve wracking that is. I I would also say that developing the personality, these guys have a lot of personality, whether
Yeah.
it's Levi and Chance and all those guys. I mean, they're just fun.
Yeah.
They love archery too, and they have interesting personalities and interesting stories. But I think when it's just regular people shooting a bow and there's no backstory. I think that's what we need to know, is that these people are real human beings. A lot of them have, regular day jobs, a lot of police officers, first responders,
Right.
like Chris Berry jumps to mind, like he's a police officer and he's at every single shoot,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's representing archery, and he's kissing people and hugging them and loving the sport. And if you knew their stories and where they came from a little bit more, then the shooting the arrow would be a little bit more intense, right? Like,
Right.
like Levi is a great example. Like I was sitting there when I was with Elite, and, he was shooting for the Vegas championship. To what that means to him, no one really knows, like think of him as a 3D guy, but, to win in a target setup like that in a Vegas situation means a lot,
Right.
So unless people can relate to the personal story of all these guys, and every one of them pretty much makes a living doing something else.
Yeah.
And they're spending their hard-earned money and time and vacation to go to these shoots, until people understand the level that they put into it. And all the dealers that go to these shoots, and close their shops down to go to the shoot,
Right.
which is not only is spending money to go to the shoot, but then they're losing revenue in their shop. Understanding that what's hanging on every arrow, for them. And, and a lot of them do it just for fun, which I think is great, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them that take it extremely seriously. And there's a reason for that. There's a pride in that. And I don't know that message is being completely conveyed. They can't be cardboard figures shooting a bow. They got to be people.
Every Sunday, at the ASA's Sunday, the pros are all finished on Saturdays. So on Sunday, it's only amateurs out on the course. And I know one of the things that we started doing was just finding a group every Sunday to tell their stories, find out who these people are, because that's what we discovered, just what you mentioned, that there are people where, okay, there's 6 ASAs during a year. Well, they use all their vacation time to go to the ASAs. That's pretty dedicated and committed. I mean, these are people who really love archery, which, I mean, of course, we just love hearing about that and telling their stories. And then we find all kinds of people, like you mentioned, first responders. We met a retired Major League Baseball player last year that now this is what he does. He likes to shoot competition. So you never know who you're going to find out there.
Right. And the stories are very human, right?
Yeah.
And that's we go back to love and archery, but what you're saying is you love this group of people, right? That are willing to make those kind of sacrifices and put the practice in and travel. A lot of these people drive 12, 14, 16 hours to go to these things.
Right.
It's again, it goes back to that. It's a labor of love. There's no such thing as a free archery tournament, so, if they happen to win their class and get a $500 check, they're still backwards, so I think that would help a lot is developing the story behind the story, if you will. It's exciting to watch. It's exciting to watch people succeed in archery, but if you really know what's on the line and all that, it's different. I think the professional golf does a good job of that. Watching people golf, which is something I can do, is because they've developed the story. The Justin Thomas story or the Dustin Johnson story or the Tiger Woods story. I mean, it's compelling.
Yeah.
There's a person there. And then when they, hit a bad shot, you feel for them. When they hit a great shot, you feel for that too. So I think that's one thing that, we'll all have to work on. I'll do my best to help, but develop those stories and care about the people shooting. And it's not always about the guy who came in first. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everybody out there, they went through something to get there. There was the last tournament, the last ASA in Foley. We went out, and I think we were on women's known 40 range, just talking to archers. And we met this young lady, and her name was Morgan Reeves. I never heard of her before, didn't know of her. And she, you know, just told us about how she learned to fix bows and do all that. And then here she shows up at Yankton for NFA Indoor Nationals, and she wins the women's amateur class for open compound setup. And it was just like, hey, you know, here's someone who's doing it. I think she's pretty young too. I think like 17 or 18. So yeah, just seeing people come up like that. I mean, that's what we like to talk about in archery.
And you know, almost every sport is about, you know, seeing something go where you're looking. You mentioned cornhole, darts,
Yeah.
you know, bowling. They all surround something. You're successfully throwing an object, rolling an object to a spot that you want.
Right.
And archery can give that feedback with today's equipment very quickly. So, you know, it used to be when we had background strings or messing with our bows every second. You know, there's a thing about archery now with the equipment that you get somebody behind a bow and give them a good release, they can hit the bullseye in 4 or 5 shots. So I think that's another thing is we're talking about how to grow the sport, is not make it look insurmountable to join the sport. You know, every sport has a cost to get into it, but you know, there's an easy way to get into it and an easy way to be successful fast.
Gotcha. All right, folks, that is another episode of the Competition Archery Media Podcast. Pete Crawford, we definitely appreciate your time and we appreciate your support of CAM. Thanks for being with us today.
Hey, no problem, PJ. I look forward to seeing you guys all out there shooting.
All right, great. Folks, the Competition Archery Media Podcast you can find on all the platforms where you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks for joining us.